What if the darkest parts of you were actually the key to your freedom? I know that might sound strange, but think about it. Have you ever noticed yourself repeating the same patterns? Sabotaging relationships, shrinking in moments when you should shine, reacting emotionally and then wondering, why did I do that? You're not alone. What if I told you these moments aren't just random and they're not flaws, but clues? Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, had a name for this hidden force within us. He called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've rejected, suppressed, or simply never faced. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us go through life without ever confronting that shadow. We bury it. We deny it. But no matter how deep we try to hide it, it still shapes our choices, our reactions, our relationships, even our destiny. In this video, we're going to explore what the shadow truly is, how it shows up in your everyday life, often without you realizing, and most importantly, how understanding it can lead you to a version of yourself that's more whole, more empowered, and deeply authentic. Because once you start to recognize the patterns, the triggers, and the deeper reasons behind your emotional responses, you stop being controlled by them. You begin to live with intention instead of reaction. So if you've ever felt like something inside you is holding you back, or if you've ever wondered why you keep getting stuck in the same cycles, then this might be the most important video you've watched in a while. Stay with me. Let's uncover the part of you that you were never taught to love, but desperately need to meet. If we want to understand why we sometimes feel like strangers to ourselves, we have to start with a man named Carl Jung. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, and he wasn't just another scholar buried in theory. He was someone who deeply questioned the human soul. While Freud focused on repressed desires and the ego, Jung wanted to go further. He wanted to understand why we act the way we do, why we hide parts of ourselves, and what it means to become truly whole. And that journey led him to develop one of his most powerful ideas, the shadow. So what is the shadow? It's not something evil or demonic. It's not some fantasy character hiding in your dreams. The shadow, according to Jung, is made up of all the parts of ourselves that we've pushed away, rejected or buried deep in our unconscious mind. Think of it like this. When you were a child, you were probably told things like, don't cry, don't get angry, or stop being selfish. Over time, in order to be accepted by your parents, teachers, or society, you learned to suppress certain emotions or behaviors. But they didn't disappear. They just moved underground into the shadow. And the shadow isn't just about negative emotions. It can also include positive traits that we were discouraged from expressing, like ambition, assertiveness, or creativity. Maybe you were told not to brag, so you learned to dim your light. Or maybe being sensitive made you feel weak, so you put on armor instead. The problem is, what we suppress doesn't vanish. It controls us from the background. Jung said it best, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let that sink in for a moment. The things you avoid, deny, or pretend aren't there. Those are often the exact things shaping your choices, your relationships, your reactions, that unexpected anger when someone criticizes you, that deep insecurity that shows up when someone succeeds, those patterns that keep repeating in your romantic life. That's your shadow speaking. But here's the thing. The shadow isn't bad. It's not something to fear or destroy. It's simply unseen. And once you bring it into the light, something amazing happens. You begin to understand yourself in a way you never have before. Imagine this. You've spent years struggling with imposter syndrome, feeling like you don't belong, or like you're not good enough no matter how much you accomplish. You keep trying to be perfect to gain acceptance. But underneath that perfectionism is a shadow made of fear. Maybe the fear of being rejected, or of not being worthy unless you perform. The moment you recognize that fear as part of your shadow, not as who you are, but as a wounded part of you that developed in childhood, you stop being ruled by it. You begin to integrate it gently with compassion. That's the heart of shadow work. It's not about fixing yourself, but meeting yourself fully. It's about becoming aware of the beliefs, emotions, and wounds that live in your unconscious, and slowly giving them a voice so they stop acting out without your permission. Let me give you another example. A man grows up being taught that showing emotion is weakness. Be a man. Toughen up. He learns to hide his sadness, his fear, his tenderness. As an adult, he becomes emotionally distant, even angry, and doesn't understand why his relationships fail. He thinks it's bad luck, or that others just don't get him. In truth, his shadow is filled with unexpressed emotion, years of vulnerability locked away. Until he acknowledges that pain, that softness he buried, he won't truly connect with others or himself. And this isn't rare. In fact, we all have a shadow. Every single one of us. The question is, are we willing to look? Because the moment we do, we open the door to something powerful. We reclaim parts of ourselves we thought were lost. You become more than just the good version of yourself you show to the world. You become whole, real, grounded. And I want you to consider this. If your shadow contains all the parts you've disowned, maybe it also contains the exact strengths you've been missing. That buried anger. It might be the fuel for your boundaries. That suppressed grief. It might be the path to deeper love. That fear you've been hiding from. It might hold the wisdom to help someone else. This is the beauty of Jung's theory. It's not just psychological, it's transformational. So let me ask you, what parts of yourself have you pushed away? What emotions do you judge in others because you can't accept them in yourself? What truths are you afraid to face? Those questions aren't comfortable, but they're the beginning of true freedom. In the next part of this video, we're going to go deeper into the real signs that your shadow is influencing your life, even when you don't realize it. And trust me, some of them will surprise you. But for now, just remember this. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. And it's been waiting for you to turn toward it. You might be wondering, okay, I understand what the shadow is, but how do I actually know if it's showing up in my life? The truth. It already is. Your shadow doesn't knock politely. It doesn't ask permission. It shows up in the most subtle, disguised, and often disruptive ways. Most of the time, we don't even realize it's happening. Let's look at some of the most common signs that your shadow may be secretly pulling the strings. 1. You have strong emotional reactions to others. Have you ever met someone and immediately felt a strong dislike without a clear reason why? Or maybe there's a trait in others that irritates you beyond logic? Someone who's too confident, too emotional, too loud, too driven. Here's the key. When our emotional reaction is disproportionate to the situation, it's often not about them. It's about us. Carl Jung called this projection a psychological defense mechanism, where we project parts of ourselves we reject onto other people. For example, if you can't stand someone who is arrogant, it may be because you were taught that confidence equals pride, and so you buried your own sense of self-worth. You might secretly long to express yourself more boldly, but instead, you judge those who do. This is the shadow in action. We push away traits we don't want to see in ourselves, and then we spot them everywhere else. Take a moment and reflect. Who triggers you the most? What quality in them makes your skin crawl? Is it possible that trait is something you've suppressed in yourself? The shadow shows up not to shame you, but to point you back to the parts of yourself you've disowned. 2. You keep repeating the same destructive patterns. Do you ever feel like you're living in a loop? You keep falling for emotionally unavailable partners. You self-sabotage just as success is around the corner. You lash out in the same arguments, even when you've promised to do better next time. It's frustrating, exhausting, and often deeply confusing. You might even start to believe, this is just who I am. I can't change. But pause for a moment. What if those patterns aren't your personality? They're your unconscious programming. That's what Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You see, the shadow holds on to past wounds, beliefs and fears formed in childhood, and unless we consciously address them, they'll keep recreating the same situations in adult life. It's like your inner child is driving the bus, and you don't even know they're holding the wheel. For example, if you grew up with emotionally distant caregivers, your shadow might pull you toward partners who are cold or withholding, not because you want pain, but because it feels familiar. The shadow confuses familiarity with safety. Until we bring awareness to these repeating patterns, we're just acting out an old story on a new stage. 3. You feel deep shame, envy, or unexplainable anger. Here's something we don't talk about enough. Shame is one of the clearest indicators that your shadow is speaking. That moment when you make a mistake and hear an inner voice whisper, "You're such a failure." When you feel intense envy watching someone else succeed, even if you try to mask it with a smile. When a minor comment makes your blood boil, and you don't understand why. These intense emotions are messages from within. They point to something unacknowledged in your psyche, usually an old belief, fear, or unmet need. And when we don't listen, these emotions build pressure until they explode or cause us to withdraw. Let's talk about envy for a second. If you feel envious of someone's success, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. In fact, it may mean that your shadow is holding a part of you that wants to shine, but was told it's wrong to be seen. So instead of chasing your own growth, you suppress the desire, and it leaks out as bitterness. The same goes for anger. If you were raised to be nice or polite, anger may feel like a threat to your identity. So you bury it. But suppressed anger doesn't disappear. It becomes sarcasm, resentment, or passive aggression. The more we avoid these uncomfortable emotions, the more they rule us from the background. But when you bring them into the light, they become your allies. Envy can point to your buried desires. Anger can show you where your boundaries are. Shame can reveal where you're still carrying someone else's judgment. 4. You struggle with self-sabotage and inner criticism. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I don't deserve this. I'm not smart enough. They're going to find out I'm a fraud. That inner voice. That's your shadow echoing beliefs you absorbed long ago. Beliefs that no longer serve you. Self-sabotage often happens when part of you wants to move forward. But another part hidden in the shadow is terrified of what will happen if you do. Maybe your conscious mind wants a loving relationship, but your shadow believes love equals pain. Maybe you crave success, but your shadow fears that success will make others jealous, or that you'll lose it all. So you procrastinate, or push people away, or start arguments you don't really mean. You're not broken, you're conflicted. Two parts of you are at war, the self you present to the world and the self you've hidden away. The path forward isn't forcing the shadow down deeper. It's meeting it with compassion. Modern psychology confirms Jung's insight. You might be wondering, is all this just theory? Actually, no. Modern research continues to validate Jung's idea of projection and the unconscious mind. Studies in cognitive psychology have shown that we often misattribute our own thoughts and feelings to others, a classic form of projection. Neuroscience confirms that up to 95% of our behaviors are influenced by unconscious processes. In therapy today, shadow work is woven into practices like internal family systems, IFS, Gestalt therapy, and even somatic trauma healing. The idea that our exiled parts need to be welcomed, not eliminated, is now a cornerstone of emotional wellness. So, what can you do about it? If any of this resonates with you, if you've seen yourself in these patterns, these reactions, these emotions, know this awareness is the first step. You don't have to fix everything today. You don't have to face the shadow all at once. But you can begin to notice. What triggers you? What do you judge in others? What emotions do you avoid at all costs? Each answer is a breadcrumb leading you back to yourself. And here's the most powerful part. As you make peace with your shadow, you become more whole, more present, more free. Because the shadow doesn't want to destroy you, it wants to be seen. And in being seen, it loses its power to control you from the dark. In the next part of this video, we'll explore how to begin the process of healing and integrating the shadow through 5 practical tools that anyone can use even if you've never done inner work before. But before we move on, I want to leave you with this. The very traits you reject might be the gold you've been searching for. Don't run from them. Lean in. What if the very parts of yourself you've spent your whole life hiding, your anger, your shame, your fear, your vulnerability, weren't obstacles, but doorways? What if the most profound transformation of your life doesn't start by adding more, but by finally turning inward and embracing what you've been running from? This is the power of shadow work. When you begin to face and integrate your shadow, not suppress it, not fight it, but truly see it, something remarkable happens. You don't just feel better, you become more you. Let's break it down. Here are some of the most powerful benefits of integrating your shadow and why so many people describe it as the turning point in their personal growth journey. 1. Radical self-awareness, the foundation of emotional intelligence. The first and perhaps most essential gift is self-awareness. Until we become aware of what's living in our unconscious, we can't change it. We can't heal it. We can't grow beyond it. Shadow work acts like a mirror, a deep one, and while it can be uncomfortable at first, it helps us recognize our emotional triggers, our patterns, and the old stories we've been unknowingly living. Instead of reacting blindly when someone offends us, we pause. We ask, why did that hurt so much? What wound is this touching? That single moment of reflection creates emotional space, and that space is where emotional intelligence is born. It's how you learn to respond with clarity, not just react out of fear. And for many people, this alone can change everything from the way they lead in their careers to how they show up in relationships. 2, 3, 2, 2. Inner calm, less anxiety, less self-criticism. Let's talk about peace, not the kind that comes from perfect circumstances, but the kind that comes from within. Most of us walk around with constant inner chatter, a harsh critic in our head. That voice that says, "You're not enough. You should have known better. You'll never change. But here's the truth, that voice isn't you. It's often your shadow carrying beliefs you internalized long ago, usually from someone else. The more you push those feelings down, the louder the voice gets. But when you face your shadow, when you sit with your shame or fear, with compassion instead of judgment, something shifts. That inner voice softens. The storm quiets. You start showing yourself grace instead of punishment. And for the first time, you realize peace isn't about being perfect, it's about being whole. 3. Unleashing creativity and power. One of the most surprising benefits of shadow work, creative power. You see, when we bury emotions or traits in the shadow, we're not just suppressing negative stuff, we're suppressing energy. And energy, when it's stuck, weighs us down. It turns into fatigue, lack of motivation, procrastination, emotional numbness. But when we reclaim those parts, when we bring them into the light and integrate them with who we are, we unlock energy. That repressed anger, it can become fuel for change. That suppressed grief, it can deepen your empathy and art. That forgotten confidence, it can spark courage to start something new. This is why so many artists, leaders, and innovators describe breakthroughs after deep inner work. The shadow holds not just pain, but power. And when it's no longer hiding, your creativity isn't caged anymore. 4. Clarity in decision-making. Let me ask you, have you ever made a decision you later regretted, not because it was wrong, but because deep down, it wasn't aligned with your truth? We all have. The truth is, when we don't understand our unconscious motives, they silently steer the wheel. We say yes when we mean no. We chase things we don't actually want. We stay in jobs, friendships, or patterns that no longer serve us. Shadow integration brings those hidden motives to the surface. You begin to recognize, oh, I wanted that because it felt safe, not because it was true. Or, I've been avoiding that opportunity because I'm afraid of being seen. And suddenly, your decisions come from clarity, not fear. You start living in alignment with who you actually are, not who you think you're supposed to be. That's not just empowerment. That's freedom. 5. A more authentic, compassionate self. Here's something no one tells you. The more you accept your own darkness, the more deeply you can love others. Shadow work dissolves the judgment we carry toward ourselves and toward others. Because once you've faced your own insecurities, your own shame, your own rage, your sadness, you stop needing to pretend you're perfect. And you stop expecting others to be. You develop compassion not as a nice idea, but as a lived truth. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse or excusing toxic behavior. It means you can see the wounds behind the masks. You can hold boundaries and hold humanity. And perhaps most beautifully, you stop hiding from intimacy. You start showing up as your whole self. And when you do that, you attract relationships, work, and purpose that match your truth, not your mask. 6. It's already changing lives through modern therapy. What's exciting is that shadow work isn't just a spiritual or philosophical idea, it's becoming a practical therapeutic tool used by psychologists and coaches around the world. Many modern therapeutic models include elements of shadow work, even if they don't call it that directly. Internal family systems, IFS for example, helps people interact with their parts, including the parts they've exiled or suppressed. Gestalt therapy encourages clients to give voice to the disowned parts of themselves. Even trauma-informed coaching now integrates deep inner work to bring unconscious patterns into awareness. In other words, psychology is catching up to what Jung saw decades ago. Healing doesn't come from pretending the darkness isn't there. It comes from integrating it. So, why does this matter for you? Because right now, you may be carrying an invisible weight, a part of you that wants to be seen but has been hidden, a part that feels like too much or not enough, a part that you've been trying to outrun with perfection productivity or pretending. And the moment you stop running, the moment you look inward, even gently, you take the first step toward becoming whole. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't need to dive into the deepest corners of your soul tomorrow. But you can start by simply noticing, listening, getting curious. What am I afraid to feel? What part of me have I pushed away? What if that part is where my next level of freedom lives? So let's bring it all together. What you've discovered today isn't just a theory, it's a mirror. A mirror to the parts of you that have been hidden, silenced, or misunderstood for far too long. The shadow is not your enemy. It's not something to conquer, erase, or fear. It's the part of your soul that's been waiting for you to stop running, to stop pretending, and to finally turn inward and say, I see you, and I'm ready to understand. When we integrate the shadow, we stop living from only half of ourselves. We stop being just what's acceptable or safe in the eyes of others. We begin to live whole, real, honest, and free. And that's what true transformation looks like, not perfection, but integration. Because your authentic self isn't just the light. It's the tension between the light and the dark. It's the dance between your strength and your vulnerability, your courage and your fear, your clarity and your confusion. So I'll leave you with this. Your true self is not just light. It's the whole light and shadow dancing together. And the moment you stop fighting your shadow is the moment you begin to finally feel at home within yourself. So if something in this video resonated with you, let it be your invitation. Don't just close this tab and go back to autopilot. Ask yourself, what part of me have I been avoiding? What truth am I finally ready to face? Then take one small action. Journal, reflect, meditate, or simply sit with the question. And if you're ready to continue this journey with deeper insights, more tools and guided practices, hit subscribe, give this video a like, and share it with someone who's ready to walk the path back home to themselves. Because you're not alone in this work. We're all carrying shadows. The question is, will you face yours?